Below is a Wild West adventure featuring respectful representation of Apache characters, frontier tensions, and a strong plot told in a cinematic, novel-style flow without headings, as you requested. The desert evening glowed with the kind of molten light that seemed to pour straight from the sun's own furnace, washing the sand in copper and gold. The sky stretched endlessly above the mesas and ridges of the Arizona territory, the air so clear that sound carried for miles. In that vast stillness, Daniel Harker rode his weary bay horse toward the darkening horizon and the thin ribbon of smoke he had spotted an hour earlier. Harker was no stranger to long roads or lonely days. A former Union scout who had wandered west after the war, he drifted from job to job, ranch to ranch, always staying long enough to earn a few dollars before the itch to move on dragged him to another dusty horizon. This time, though, he was moving without choice. 3 days earlier he had been ambushed by thieves, 2 men who wanted his horse, his saddlebag, and anything else they could rip from him. They hadn't expected him to fight back. One fled with a broken nose. The other lay unconscious somewhere in the arroyo where Daniel had left him. But Daniel hadn't escaped unscathed. The slash across his forearm still burned with infection, and his canteen had been shot clean through. Without water, without shelter, the desert would have finished him had he not seen that faint trail of smoke. Now, as twilight gathered, he rode toward it with the last of his strength. He knew what it meant, an encampment, possibly Apache, and he knew that entering an Apache camp uninvited was risky. Yet his choices were either gamble on their mercy or collapse into the desert sands and let the coyotes pick over his bones. He pressed forward. As he approached the grove of stunted cottonwoods beside a wash, he saw the first hint of movement, 2 riders emerging from the shadows, their ponies silent upon the earth. Their weapons were not drawn, but both men sat with the quiet readiness of those who could unsheath a knife or knock an arrow faster than a rattler could strike. Daniel raised both hands slowly. "I come in peace," he called hoarsely. "I seek water, and only water." The riders exchanged glances. One spoke a few words in Apache, and the other nodded. The older of the 2 broad-shouldered, his hair bound with a strip of dark cloth, called back in accented English. "You ride into our camp. You ask for water. Why do you bleed?" "Trouble on the trail," Daniel said. "But I mean no trouble here." The riders approached, circling him. They took his knife, his Colt, and his Winchester, not roughly but decisively. Then the older man motioned. "You come. The chief will decide." Daniel followed them into the grove where the camp lay spread along the wash. Hide shelters, a fire pit, several ponies, and the soft bustle of evening tasks. Men repaired arrows and bridles, women ground maize and tended cooking pots. The smell of roast venison drifted on the warm breeze. Children stopped their play to stare at him. Some of the women watched too, not warily but with open curiosity. Daniel bowed his head respectfully to each he passed. He was led to a circle near the largest fire where an elderly man with sharp, knowing eyes sat cross-legged upon a woven mat. His hair was streaked with white, and the lines of his face bore not just age, but the stories of a lifetime lived in the hard country. "I am Chief Naish," the man said. "My scouts say you ask for water." "I do," Daniel said, "and some rest, nothing more." Naish gestured, and a young woman brought a clay bowl of cool water. Daniel drank it greedily, almost gasping as the moisture revived him. His head swam from exhaustion. "You have been wounded," the chief said, "and wounded men can bring danger behind them." "Only the desert is chasing me," Daniel said, "and I don't aim to stay longer than you allow." The chief studied him for a long moment, then gave a small nod. "In our ways," Naish said, "a guest is welcomed if he brings peace. But a guest must also bring something of himself. Among our people, A visitor shows honor by bringing delight to the camp stories, music, laughter, or help especially to the women who tend our fires, who work without rest. Their joy brings balance to all. Daniel blinked. He had heard of Apache customs, but never this one. Still, it sounded harmless enough. "I can offer stories," Daniel said. "I've lived on the trail since the war ended. I've seen more than I care to." "That will do," Naish said. "Tonight, you rest. Tomorrow, you show whether your presence brings good or ill." The young woman who had carried the water stepped forward. She was perhaps in her 20s, with calm eyes and an air of quiet strength. "This is Tala," Naishi said. "She will tend your wound." Daniel touched his hat. "Ma'am, come," she said, and he followed her to a smaller fire where she motioned for him to sit. She examined his arm, tisked softly, and set about washing the cut with warm water infused with crushed leaves. "That herb," Daniel said through clenched teeth, "smells powerful." "It is." "It fights sickness," she replied. "You let the wound go too long." Didn't have much choice. She cleaned the cut, packed it with a paste that burned fiercely, and wrapped his arm with strips of soft cloth. "You will live," she said simply. "Much obliged." When she finished, she surprised him by handing him a small wooden whistle, carved with delicate markings. "For later," she said, "if you choose to bring music." "I'm no musician." "You do not have to be good," she said with a faint smile. "Only sincere." That evening, after he had eaten the venison stew offered to him, the camp settled into a gentle hush. The fire crackled in the center as families gathered around, and Chief Naish motioned him forward. "Now, guest," the chief said, "show us your stories." Daniel felt dozens of eyes upon him. He cleared his throat, uncertain. But he had faced soldiers, outlaws, and death before. Telling a story shouldn't have been the hardest thing he'd ever done. He began with a simple tale how he had once mistaken a wild javelina for a domestic hog and spent the better part of an afternoon running from the furious creature. His dry humor surprised even him. The camp laughed at the absurd turns he added. The children leaned forward, delighted. The older women shook their heads in amusement. Even the young warriors cracked smiles. Encouraged, Daniel told a tale from the war, not a bloody one, but a moment when a group of green soldiers had mistaken a mule for a Confederate spy because it wandered too quietly in the dark. This got even more laughter, with some of the older men slapping their thighs. Then Tala held up the wooden whistle she had given him earlier. "Music," she said, her eyes playful. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "You really want me to embarrass myself?" "Do your best," she said. He blew a few tentative notes. The sound was soft, airy, a little clumsy, but pleasant enough. With a few tries he managed to coax a simple melody, a wandering tune that reminded him of open plains and lonely nights by the campfire. The women swayed gently, humming along. A couple of children jumped up and tried to dance in small, excited hops. Chief Naiche nodded in approval. "Your presence brings laughter. This is good." Daniel slept that night beneath the cottonwoods, the stars wheeling overhead like a river of white fire. For the first time in days, he felt safe. The next morning, he woke to the sound of raised voices. From the ridge to the east, a column of dust approached. Riders, about a dozen. And not Apaches. Daniel recognized the type even before he saw their faces: ranch guns, the kind who liked to clean out Apache camps whether they posed a threat or not. Men who didn't mind stirring trouble just to claim land or livestock. The camp tensed. Warriors gathered bows and rifles. Women guided children behind the shelters. Chief Naish spoke sharply to Daniel. "You know these men." "No," Daniel said, "but I know their sort. They shoot first, ask nothing later." The riders halted some distance away. Their leader, a mustached man with small, mean eyes, barked across the wash. "We're looking for a horse thief," he said. Tall fella, white, wounded, came this direction yesterday. Every Apache eye turned to Daniel, though not accusingly, only for confirmation. I'm no thief, Daniel said quietly, but those men who attacked me, they could have lied to cover their own tracks. You want us to give you up? Nish asked. No, Daniel said. I just don't want anyone hurt on my account. The chief studied him. In Apache culture, a guest once accepted was under the protection of the camp. But warfare brought only loss, and Naichi was not reckless. You are our guest, Naichi said finally. We decide what happens next. The mustached leader shouted again. Send the man out. Don't make us come in there. Tala stepped beside Daniel. They will attack anyway, she said quietly. Men like that always do. Daniel nodded grimly. Let me talk to them. They want me, not your people. Naish raised a hand. No, they want blood. If you go, they will shoot you before you speak. If we fight, we lose lives. But there is a better way. The chief turned to Daniel. Last night you brought laughter. Today you will bring reason. You will stand with me when we speak with them. They will see we are not afraid, and they will not fire first if you are present. Daniel wasn't fully convinced, but the chief had wisdom in his voice. They walked out together, Naish at the front, Daniel at his side, the warriors flanking them at a distance. The mustached leader sneered. Well, looky there. You're protecting him. Should have known. You people always hide criminals. Daniel stepped forward. I'm no criminal, Price. You know my name? Yeah. Recognized you from Bisbee. Heard you like pushing folks off their land. Price's eyes narrowed. You got a big mouth for a man whose arm's barely hanging on. I didn't steal anything, Daniel said. 2 of your men ambushed me. I fought them off. They lied to save their hides. Murmurs rippled through Price's group. One rider shifted uneasily. Even if that's true, Price said, you're riding a horse that should belong to me now. The claim was made. Daniel's jaw tightened. This horse wasn't stolen, and you know it. But if you want him that badly, I'll trade. Trade, Price laughed. With Apaches as your friends, you got nothing to trade. I got my word, Daniel said. And Naishi here is chief of his people. He'll witness that if I owe you something, I'll work it off in Bisbee for 3 days. That enough to soothe your pride? The ranch guns muttered among themselves. Price glared, calculating. He wanted to kill Daniel, not for theft, but for defiance. But with the Apache chief standing calmly at Daniel's side and a dozen silent warriors watching, he couldn't fire without sparking a small war. Price spat into the dust. 3 days. Then you're gone from this territory. 3 days, Daniel said. Price turned his horse. Let's go. Ain't worth the trouble. The riders retreated in a cloud of dust. Only when the last of them disappeared behind the ridge did Daniel breathe out. Naiche looked at him with approval. You chose peace. Not all men do. I didn't want anyone dying because of me, Daniel said. That is why you will stay another day, Naiche said. Tonight again you bring joy to our camp. After that, you may travel. That evening, the mood in camp was lighter than before, relieved, almost celebratory. Tala insisted he join one of the cooking circles, where he attempted and failed to properly grind maize, much to the amusement of the women who worked beside him. They laughed warmly, correcting his grip, showing him how to move the stone in smooth, even strokes, instead of the awkward scraping he attempted. Later he repaired a child's broken wooden toy horse using a small knife one of the warriors lent him. Then he helped an elderly woman carry a heavy water jar, careful not to spill a drop. Each small act seemed to ripple with appreciation through the camp. As night deepened, the fire crackled, and Daniel found himself once again at its center, surrounded by faces lit by flame. This time, he didn't feel like a stranger. He felt like someone who had earned his place there, however briefly. He told a story about a stagecoach he once rode with a preacher who couldn't stop quoting scripture, even while bandits chased them across a canyon. The audience laughed, clapped, and urged him on. Then Tala handed him the wooden whistle again. Your song, she said. He played not expertly, but easily, comfortably. The melody floated through the warm night like a desert breeze. Two young girls danced, their steps graceful and sure. The older women hummed softly. The men nodded in rhythm. When the song ended, Chief Naishe spoke. "You came to us seeking water, but you brought more than you asked for. You brought balance after fear, laughter after worry, joy after danger." Daniel swallowed, unexpectedly moved. "Your people saved my life." Tala met his eyes. "And you gave something back." The next morning dawned clear and pale. Daniel's wound felt markedly better. Tala gave him dried herbs for the road and a small pouch of food. Chief Nightshish returned his weapons, his horse, and his canteen, now filled. "You go to Bisbee," Nightshish said. "Keep your word. But know this, you leave as a friend." Daniel nodded respectfully. "And you have mine." As he mounted his horse, the children waved, several women smiled, and Tala lifted her hand in a silent farewell. Daniel rode out of the camp, the sun at his back and the whisper of the wooden whistle tucked safely into his coat. He knew he would keep his promise in Bisbee. But he also knew that something had changed in him. For the first time in a long while, he felt anchored, not to a place, but to a memory of kindness freely given and honestly returned. As he reached the ridge, he looked back one last time. The camp was already shrinking into the distance, but the warmth of it stayed with him like an ember. He touched the whistle and smiled. The desert ahead was still vast and wild, but he no longer felt alone in it.